You are listening to Road to CEO, nothing but in-depth interviews with executives about their journeys as CEO. I'm your host, Will Marlow, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Be quick, be decisive, and let people know that you're there for them.
I'm here today with Kathleen Smith, the co-CEO of ClearedJobs.net, a company that she's worked with in different capacities since 2005. Kathleen has an interesting journey because she served as a consultant for ClearedJobs. Then she came up through the CMO track, as I understand it, serving as chief marketing officer before taking a co-leadership position as co-CEO fairly recently, I think. Is that how long have you served as co-CEO?
It's been about 2 years. So it was, once you start building up your team and you sort of force yourself out of a job, and then you realize that there are bigger jobs that you need to do because as my grandfather and my father have told me, it's not necessarily the widget you built, but how you market it and how you service it. So as we grew the company, we realized that making sure that marketing is on par with finance and sales and operations. So it's a really great leadership team. We complement each other well. So I think that it's a unique way of leading a company, but when you organically grow a company, when you are faced with many different challenges, my stepping into the co-CE role 2 years ago, I didn't know that we would have a pandemic. I didn't know that we would then be challenged with a significant, hurdles in many different ways, not only from an internal but an external way. So it was actually good to have a co-CEO at that time. And I'm glad I was here to take that role on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking more about that and hearing about that because it is a perspective that is less common. We don't hear as much about how that division works. So I'm really looking forward to that. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about ClearedJobs? What is ClearedJobs? Who do you serve? What's that company about?
So what's interesting is that no matter how many times I explain it, people already have in their mind what my company is. And I say that we're a recruitment marketing firm. We're a job board and a job fair company. Job boards have been around since 1994, but people believe that they don't work or that they're not part of a talent acquisition pipeline, when in actuality all they've done is grown and expanded. LinkedIn is one of the largest job boards that's out there, but we're very specific to one niche, which is people who have security clearances and who are looking for jobs from cleared facilities employers. So it's a very, very narrow niche. It's something that we have excelled in over the last 20 years because we are veteran owned and we do have that perspective. Yeah. And with any company, it's not necessarily the fast grow, but it's how you build the relationships in the community. Yeah. So that was the perspective I brought in as a consultant, having come from nonprofit marketing and healthcare marketing prior to that. Sort of said, we really need to have our roots in the community. And we were actually able to make some key decisions way back when. And only now are we seeing, the fruits of those labors. So I'm really excited. I was never really someone who thought I would be at one company for more than 10 years. And I can actually say I've been here for a lot longer.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's in my opinion, it's always a great sign when you see a company that can keep employees, they can keep team members. I remember I started my career on Capitol Hill. I was, before I became an entrepreneur, I was a political aide and I worked for 2 members of Congress. And one of the things you learn is when you see members of Congress that can't hold a staff, they don't have people sticking around long term, it's a really bad sign that congressman is not he's got other problems.
Mhm.
And I did not learn very many management lessons on Capitol Hill, um, probably for the best, but that one always stuck with me because I remember, and I don't know how much you remember about I can't even remember this era of politics, but, remember Anthony Weiner from
Mhm.
New York. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, I remember I was, I dealt with him kind of early on because I just had a very good friend from college who was also on Capitol Hill and took a job with Anthony Weiner. And he described the office environment and this rapid turnover from all these staff members. In any case, I remember thinking that, I remember advising him to get out of that office as quickly as he could. And,
Mhm.
he eventually he did, but it's just a lesson that always stuck with me. So,
Well, one thing that I've really been honored to do is that when I was working at a previous organization, I had a phenomenal marketing team, and when things just click and you have great team members that you complement each other, each other's strengths, each other's weaknesses,
yeah,
and you know how to finish each other's sentences. So I've been able to bring that entire team over with me, and I'm just
that's great.
it's been thrilled to have my entire team from World Wildlife Fund come and be with me here at ClearedJobs.net.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and I didn't learn this lesson on Capitol Hill, but I did eventually learn the importance of having that team. People
Hmm.
you can trust, people you rely on, people you can count on. So that sounds outstanding. One of the other things that is interesting to me about Clear Jobs is just that such clear focus. I mean, there are
Hmm.
so many ways to serve job seekers, and I feel like that clear focus on cleared personnel and cleared job seekers seems like it would be a tremendous strength. And I was just wondering, is it ever a challenge to keep that focus? Do you ever feel tempted to go beyond cleared jobs, or is it just more, is it easy to keep that laser focus?
So we were, I mean, uh, having a single purpose or having a single audience is has pros and cons.
Yeah,
So pros is you have a very limited market. Now, of course, we haven't tapped the entire market. We do have competitors, but
yeah,
we don't have the wide breadth of competitors that a lot of other companies have. We also get to know the persona
mhm,
of each one of our customers very well. And
mhm,
so that not only allows us to develop programs and strategies that serve that customer, but we're also able to train people who work and support them. So
yeah,
that does make it easier. We were tempted, we did sort of split off and have a parallel company that
mhm,
did work in the cybersecurity community because,
right,
we, like many other people, saw it grow. And we realized that, that probably was not a good decision on our part,
mhm,
but we gave it a try, and we were able to actually continue to grow Clear Jobs while doing that, and grow our segment of the business that we can go into. So, it was a
yeah,
decision to first start a separate company and then realize it really was just another offering that we
yeah,
had within our,
yeah,
customer base. And that's one thing, is always understanding where your customers are going to grow. And cybersecurity was one area where they're growing. That's now also growing into Space Force. And
yeah,
so for the first 10 years we really weren't seeing the community expanding,
mhm,
but now all of a sudden we have two different areas where it can grow, and that's what makes my
yeah,
job more exciting because I
yeah.
get to build more strategies.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting because there's always that trade-off between a smaller market but better ability to serve the market because you know it so much better,
Hmm.
and going the other direction. And I've my observation has been that it's almost always the right decision to just keep focusing and keep serving that
Hmm.
area that, I mean, obviously there are certain expansion opportunities that can make sense, but you know uh, I've just found that it is, more often than not, when I look at my clients, the growth that occurs when they're focused on their core audience is the stuff that they really value, and it's really just something that they want to continue.
Well, it's also who are you serving? I
Yeah.
mean, if you're a public company and you have shareholders that you have to respond to as far as dividends are concerned, you're
Yeah.
going to get a lot of pressure to expand into new markets and bring in more revenue versus being a private company, which we are, and being able to say, what is the most strategic way for this team
Hmm.
to grow? And that's always been sort of a
Yeah.
question. Do we go public? Are we private? Who are we responsible to and
Yeah.
for? We All the members of the leadership team have all been part of large companies before, have
Hmm.
many part of the military, and that taking care of your own
Hmm.
philosophy is something that's been inherent, that we take care of our own, and that's who we're responsible to. So I think that having the single focus has been really great. It does have their challenges. I mean,
Yeah.
when we had the government shut down in 2013, we saw our customers suffering, we were suffering, we had to cut back as well, and we had to let go of a lot of people. We've been able to hire them all back, which is great. But when you are reliant on one customer base, you take the good with the bad.
Yeah. 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 I think that's very relatable. So, can you talk a little bit about your personal journey to become CEO? How did that start?
Mm. It's funny. I'm a little older than people think I am, which I'm glad I can hide that. But when I grew up as a little girl, I never thought I could be a CEO. I was, going to be happy if I could be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Those were the two things that I studied in college. I did have some really great role models. My grandfather started as a Yellow Pages salesperson, and moved to become the CEO of Reuben H. Donnelly, which
Oh.
was the parent company of the Yellow Pages and OAG and a variety of
Mhm.
others. So I saw his rise. My father is also, started as a lowly lieutenant in the Navy, and built quite a successful company from there.
Mhm.
And they both inspired me in saying, you have some specific skills. And I was like, I'm just going to study biochem and, go from there. But then sales and marketing really inspired me. And
Mhm.
when you look at sales and marketing back then, there weren't positions like VP of marketing or
Mhm.
VP of sales. It was only a CFO and only a CEO,
Mhm.
and you didn't really think about small to medium sized companies. I came from the era of, you always worked for a Fortune 100 company and you were going to be a cog rather than someone who made decisions. And I made one or two changes in my career. I started in biochem and law, wanted to be a combo lawyer doctor, and then went into sales and marketing and really loved it.
Mhm.
uh, from there, went into nonprofit marketing because I wanted to change the world and take care of animals and children and the environment. And I met some amazing people there, but also realized that it fine tuned my marketing sense, but it
Mhm.
wasn't really the fulfilling kind of work that I wanted. And but it put me in the right place at the right time to start working as a consultant in the nonprofit community. And my husband served with several people in the Marines, and they were all having beer one night, and they were starting to talk about building a company. And they obviously knew the technical component, they knew the sales component, but they didn't know anything about branding and marketing. And I
Mhm.
saw a really great opportunity to you know, take a chance on myself and take a chance on crafting an idea. So everything from the brand to
Yeah.
how we represent ourselves in the community basically started with that one conversation over beer and pizza. And I've had so many growth opportunities here. Many times when I wanted to quit, many times when I wanted to throw my computer against the wall and just walk out and become a barista at Starbucks. At the same time, I was on the ground floor, and
Mhm.
that was something that I never thought I would have the opportunity to create, to hire, to train, to coach, to cultivate, to do everything.
Yeah.
And, I learned from my grandfather that it's, as I said earlier, it can be a widget, but if you don't know how to market and sell it, it's not going to be a company. So that journey of better understanding that it's a partnership between various in different departments of the company. I remember when I was in sales, and there was always this animosity between the front end salespeople and the back office people. And
Mhm.
you see it in so many different companies that there's animosity. There's just this
Yeah.
battle: who's more important, who's more valuable, who makes the final decision. And to be on the ground floor and being able to say we all have a voice. We can't do one part of the company without the other part of the company. So being able to temper my voice and saying, it's mine, we've got to do this, to, okay, what are your concerns? What are your challenges? These are my concerns. These are my challenges. Let's create a solution out of the two. And,
Yeah.
and that's probably been, one of the fun parts for me.
I totally relate to that. I One of the things that makes is most satisfying for me is thinking through the company culture. And and so I've run my company for about 8 years. I should really do a fresh count of how many years it's really been, but I think it's been about 8 years. And so, you think about what you define your company culture to a certain extent, and then you have to execute on it. You have to live
Mhm.
up to it, and that, which is not always easy.
Mm-mm.
But I mean, and defining it is the first step. It is. I'm a big believer in being very deliberate about how you want to treat people, how you want others to be treated at your company. And
Mhm.
so starting that off was, for me anyway, was the right first step. And then at one point things got off track. We had certain team members who maybe weren't aligned with the culture, and we had to change. We had to get the company back to where it was supposed to be from a culture perspective. And that is a quality of life issue, in my opinion. It really.
Well,
Yeah.
it is, but what's funny is you have to decide what those key components. I mean, there was one or two decisions that we made way back when,
Yeah.
and they just felt like the right decision, but they actually were short-term, very wrong decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in for the long game. So we made some decisions. And what's really nice is now we just constantly are able to say, let's come back to that one question. Are we this or are we this?
Mm-hmm.
And I know not a lot of companies don't do that. And we are able to do that. We're able to say, we are this, we are not this.
Yeah.
There's specific customer bases that our competitors sell to that we don't.
Right.
And it's a defining issue for our culture. It's also a defining issue for the way that we treat both customer base, both job seekers and employers. So I'm grateful that we made that decision over 15 years ago. And it's also a divining rod that we come back to time and time again. You know, there's always pushback at one time or another to change
Yeah.
that decision. And I was like, no, that's a defining principle of our company.
So okay, so I want to push more on that topic for a moment. So because one of the things I like to talk about is what is something that you can point to that was a particularly challenging decision that as a company you had to make, or that you had to, from a strategic perspective. And it sounds like you're referring to a strategic decision that you made that could have gone another way. And can you speak more about the details of that, or is that a confidential topic?
I can dance around it. How's
Okay,
that?
all right, fair
I'll
enough.
do my best.
Yeah.
So, um, you always have a choice of the kinds of customers you're going to have.
Yeah.
And some customers will have bigger pockets than others. But the goals of those customers may not always be in line
Yeah.
with your goals, or how you treat your, how we treat job seekers. So we made a decision that there was one customer base we were not going to work with.
I see.
And all of our competitors do work with them. And we just sort of looked down our business line and we said, no, all of our competitors were working with that one customer base years ago, and they got some really great short-term revenue,
Yeah.
spikes, and they continue to see that. And that's not how I've trained our teams to work with the customers. And if I did work with that new customer base, we would have to change a lot of things within our company. So again, it's back to the defining principle. And it's that's one of those questions that you always have to ask yourself
Yeah.
is, what is the profile of the customer that I want to work
Yeah.
with? And people think that they need to work with everyone that's going to pay them for their service. But, just like when you walk into a restaurant and they have a sign that says, we have the right to refuse to serve anyone,
Yeah.
you do, if you have a specific customer base that is going to challenge you to lower your standards, lower your
Yeah.
ethics, you really have to decide why you're in business. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we made that decision, and we do get pushback on it from time to time, and it's just a better way for our company to operate.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I can relate to that. When I was new, first time entrepreneur, I started a software company that served higher education, and higher education is a very demanding industry. At the time, this was years ago, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was a wonderful wonderful experience, but it was my first experience in business, and one of the things that I learned the hard way was, you take on a particular client and they'd want you to customize the software. And as a brand new entrepreneur, you want to say yes. You want to, they're paying you, you don't have much money,
Hmm.
or maybe you don't have any money. And so it seems like a very easy decision to just say, of course, yeah, we'll do this. But the fact of the matter is in software, which I know is a little different than
Hmm.
than what you and I are both doing right now. But with software, you need a vision for what that software is supposed to be. and
Hmm.
and if you want that software to live up to that vision, you can't derail your roadmap every time somebody has a unique or specific request. But it's difficult to do when the customer it has deep pockets and wants it the way they want it. But I remember that with my first company, that was may have been the key initial lesson learned, was it, to say no on some of that stuff.
Yeah, as you said, it's so hard when you're in the beginning stages. You want to say yes to everyone, and you don't want to turn anything down. You don't want to be that person that says no, but
Yeah.
you have to understand how many resources you have as a company and how much resource you have as a person.
Yeah.
Because, we could all, and many of us do, work 80, 90 hours a
Yeah.
week, and then there's absolutely nothing left. And then you end up shortchanging yourself and shortchanging your company and your customers, and then what are you doing it for? So,
Yeah.
we I remember the days of working 80 hours, 90
Yeah.
hours, and traveling a lot, and all the sacrifices that we were all told we had to make to order to have a business. And I wasn't going to do that for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we've made some key decisions.
Yeah. 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 I am too. I am too. Okay. So another question I wanted to ask was, um, do you have a most important metric in business that you like to look at? Is there something that you track that you feel like this is that one thing that I need to keep my eye on above all others?
Well, when I was coming up through marketing, it was always interesting that, you had those metrics. You had open
Yeah.
rates, click through rates, I started here before social media took off. So, it was like followers and
Yeah.
impressions and all of that. And I was like, okay, now we've gotten down to engagements. And
Yeah.
with our market, as far as job seekers are concerned, I could be excited that I have 1,000 views or 2,000 views on, a video like this. But if I don't have the conversion
Yeah.
into someone who signed up to my site, so, on a job seeker standpoint, it's conversions to, specific conversions. How many
Yeah.
times do we have job seekers convert into having a profile on our
Yeah.
site? From a business standpoint, we always look at, or for me, it's, our renewal rate.
Hmm.
Yes, having new sales is great, but have we met their needs? Are we
Yeah.
continuing to meet their needs? So I always look at the
Yeah.
renewal rate. And then after that, it's the growth. So how much growth have we had year over year? And
Yeah.
what do we need to do to grow sustainably? I mean, there have been
Yeah.
times when we've grown but we haven't had the infrastructure in place to support it. So that's always,
Yeah.
people are looking at growth statistics, but it's,
Yeah.
to me, it's always, is it sustainable growth?
Yeah. I agree with that. I know, and from the conversations that I have with CEOs, I found that kind of like you, CEOs are often able to really, boil things down into a handful of metrics that really do, they're leading indicators. They essentially just kind of project forward to,
Hmm.
what they're trying to achieve. So, I think, I think that makes a lot of sense. For me, it is all about, what I really care about is current customer satisfaction levels. And so,
Hmm.
it's difficult to measure this one exactly, but, and now I'm actually blanking on the name of the metric, but the net promoter score,
Hmm.
where it's just a negative one, a zero, or a positive one. Negative one is somebody does not want to recommend, would never recommend you to
Hmm.
a peer. Neutral, zero, would be people who, they're satisfied, but they probably wouldn't recommend you.
Hmm.
And positive one is somebody who'd be happy to recommend you and wants to find people to recommend doing business with you. And that to me is, if that metric is always in the positive, then the growth will be there. The employee retention for me would be there. There's a lot of, that to me is, even though it's difficult to measure it, it is probably the most important one from my end.
Another one that's, hard for us to quantify, but it's always sort of a nice to have in the back of your head, is there's a lot of turnover in our industry,
Hmm.
or there's a lot of people who move to other positions. So if we have someone who works at one government contractor and
Yeah.
then moves to another and buys our services there,
Yes.
one, it's growth, but it's continued customer retention. The customer just
Yes.
has, a new team. So that's always, we don't really have a metric with that, but it's
Yeah.
always nice to see, because it's hard, because sometimes someone will be a recruiter at one company
Yeah.
and then at a smaller company they'll become the director of recruiting. What we do, I mean, one of the things that I've done is I've looked at the industry, and there wasn't a lot in the way of best practices. So,
Hmm.
with other recruiters in the industry, we started an organization called Recruit TC 10, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And being able to offer that opportunity to my customers to learn best practices,
Yeah.
what was nice is customers that we have supported, customers that we've helped, we've given them strategies to grow their talent pipelines, and then they become better professionals. They become, there's that company in this area called, or former company called Sims, that said, an educated consumer is our best customer.
Hmm.
So training and supporting our customers as they grow within their career, and then having them come back and saying, yeah, I need that
Yeah.
professional support. So yeah, that's, as I said, that's one of those metrics that, like, oh, we got
Yeah.
another one, yay.
Yeah. It's so funny you should say that, because I completely agree, but I never thought about that. I never thought about how that could be a metric maybe. That, I mean, I love it where when I grow because somebody moves, they bring us with them. Yeah, that is kind of a related metric to the net promoter score. I always celebrate it when it happens, but I never thought about it as a metric that we could be kind of thinking about more. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's fantastic, and actually every now and then I have calculated how much revenue and how many clients currently are the result of that. I have not done that recently, but it would be fairly significant.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's no matter what, if it's restaurants, if it's, anything, referral business, people who
Yeah.
continue on. So in marketing, we know, it's one-to-one marketing is the most,
Yeah.
effective kind. Referral is the most effective. It doesn't matter what industry or line of business you're in. It's always the best metric.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's it like being a co-CEO?
It's sometimes a great partnership, and other times it's a battle. It's one. I'm glad we're co-CEOs because it allows us both to have quality of life. I mean, if
Mhm.
one of us had to shoulder it all, I mean, anyone who is a
Yeah.
CEO and shoulders both parts, I think both parts of the company get better attention and get better support. There used to be the battle over budget, and once we were able to
Yeah.
sort of really see, it was marketing in this industry really didn't really grow until about 8, 9 years ago. And then its influence on buying
Mhm.
decisions and job seeker decisions really, we've watched that grow considerably to the point that we do have a seat at the table. So before it was not having a seat at the table, it was more of being a back office department. And I think that my, yelling and screaming and jumping and down and saying we are important, because I remember jumping
Mhm.
and screaming and doing that in large organizations.
Yeah.
Everyone thought marketing was not valuable. It
Yeah.
was more of the icing on the cake. It wasn't necessarily something that added to the bottom line. It
Yeah.
only took away from the bottom line.
Yeah.
But what's also nice is having clear delineation of staff,
Yeah.
resources, and goals, but knowing that our goals are parallel, are complemented by goals on the other side. So sales needs specific metrics and they need
Yeah.
specific tools. We need specific feedback and tools and resources. So being able
Yeah.
to, sit down, we have a leadership call that happens once a week. Well, we started,
Okay.
so with the pandemic, I finally realized that sometimes when you're a smaller company, you don't have formalized decision making processes. You just
Yeah.
sort of like have those water cooler conversations. And I think one of the things that really is, I just call them silver linings of the pandemic, is I just said, look, we need to have, regular leadership meetings where we discuss everything.
Yeah.
And I used to be, well, I still am, because I'm here on the webinar with you, the face of the company. But with the pandemic, I wasn't traveling, I
Yeah.
wasn't out, so everyone was used to me being out. They
Yeah.
weren't used to me being part of decision making processes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. They would just sort of hear, oh, Kathleen's presenting here, she's presenting there, and she's talking to these people, and we'll see the benefit of that in 6 months. And I really was able to turn sort of that community building internally to the company, setting sort of the tone of how we talk to our customers and how we talk to each
Yeah.
other. And some small things that I've done along the way. Every Friday afternoon, I write an inspirational message. And it's something that I know people talk about doing every now and then, but I made a commitment to do it every single Friday. Today is the 53rd one that I've written. So, and it's all about setting the tone of self care. Who do we
That's
take care
awesome.
of? what is everyone's mental health like? It's okay not to have a good mental health day. Um, so I think, the pandemic really gave us an opportunity to grow into these different roles. There was a lot more operations that needed to be done. And, my co CEO was able to really focus on that rather than
Okay.
needing to focus on staff care and
Okay.
marketing.
I think that's awesome. So I think it's also kind of inspiring for me. I think that I bet that does have those weekly messages that you put out. I bet that does have a very positive impact on morale and encouragement. Um, and I will say it's something, not specifically the notes, but be providing that kind of guidance to my team is something I think about and I do make an effort to do, but I can see a huge advantage to committing to creating a structure like that
Mhm.
where where you're able to put it in front of you in a tangible way.
It's, you know, it, every single week when I would think about it, it would be, I would have an inspiration
Yeah.
and then, craft a message around that. And they weren't always serious, some of them were fun, some, Monty Python quotes, or I did a David Hasselhoff cameo once, which, it's really hard when you have a team that's everywhere from 70 years old down to 22. How do you find a star that's going to meet everyone's needs? Thankfully, David was something that sort of crossed every board.
Very cool.
Um, but some of it's fun, some of it's serious. Some, in the beginning, it literally was, we made it through week one, and this is what we accomplished week
Yeah.
one, and then we've made it through week two, and we've made it through month one, and we've made it through month two. So let's. I think, like all of us during the pandemic, it was, okay, what do I need to do to make through the end of the
Yeah.
day? Because I found that in sort of the disaster situation that we were in the beginning, it was, we can't forecast.
Yeah.
We just have to forecast to the end of the day, the end of the week.
Yeah.
Things were changing too fast. We had to come up with, okay, what is our decision matrix on some of our events? I mean, 20-25% of our business is career events, and
Yeah.
they weren't happening.
Right.
We had partners and conferences that we were working with, and they were all up in the air as to what are we doing, what are we not doing. It was really hard for my team and I, because we are so used to planning a year out,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden we couldn't plan, and we didn't realize what that was doing to us internally. We
Yeah.
didn't have structure. So a lot of the messages were just, we made it, we made it.
Yeah.
Then when we made it through the first 3 months, we could sort of sit back and, like, okay, we're in a rhythm now,
Yeah.
and have some fun. uh, I even did them on my vacation. I did them when I was traveling. Thank goodness for Google Schedule, because I didn't write them every Friday. I sometimes wrote them on Monday, but they definitely went out. So
It's great.
shh, don't tell them that.
That's great, and it's interesting because so my company is virtual. I have
And so is ours.
okay, so I was gonna okay, so that's interesting. So you really were able to then proactively kind of make you started doing those weekly messages in response to COVID. Is that right?
Right. So
Okay,
it
so
was more of, um, a lot of uncertainty. So
yeah,
we've been, a virtual company the entire time.
okay,
We do have in-person events, but
yeah,
the rest of the company is, we're nationwide. Actually we're global right now,
yeah,
since we have several military spouses who are deployed with their or with their military husbands and wives. So we were actually able to help our customers.
yeah.
We actually, since so many of our customers were used to going into an office, we ended up being like, okay, well, this is how you
Mm,
set aside your home office. This is how you set
that's great.
aside time for working. Yes, we have kids at home too. This is what we do. So we had so
Right.
many new conversations to have. We had so many different structures that, like our schedule was completely off. And but the messages were just a way to say, we're all not together,
Yeah.
but we really are, and this is how we can, make it through another weekend. It was also, I think, my first message I remember very clearly, which was people were in a state of chaos.
Yeah.
They were,
That's right.
we had all closed down. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring.
Yeah.
We Everyone had their kids coming home from college or coming home from school, and I didn't want people to spend the entire weekend thinking about that and thinking about what work was going to be like. And I said, I want you off the computers. I want you taking care of yourselves, taking care of family, and some decisions will be made on Monday, and we will communicate those to you right away. So you will have a definitive answer
Yeah.
on some major questions. Right now, I want you to go take care of yourself and your family. So I that's part of the mental health message.
Yeah.
I didn't want people working the weekends. Now, there's a few people that I know you work with who have a tendency to work on the weekends, and I know they know who they are. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah. Some things just can't be stopped, I think.
But I knew that when they worked for me in another organization, so I know that that's the way they work.
Yeah, I'm even more impressed though by that response because I as the CEO of a virtual company, one of my challenges was with COVID. So we did need to respond to COVID. COVID presented an immense challenge to us from a business perspective because we had different clients that were impacted in different ways, and
Mhm,
so it was a big challenge to respond. Um, However, as a company that had about 10 years or so of experience working remotely, there were a lot of things that were not changes. We were working, and I should say we do have office space in Europe. So we've got an office in Europe for one team, and people report to that every day. Not currently, but for
mhm,
them, it was a change to go from the office space to working from home. In the
mhm,
US, the team here has always been remote, and so including myself, and so it there were some things where I had to kind of remind myself like things have changed, even though for me personally and for a number of other team members, we're still doing Zoom calls, we're still kind of having the normal cadence of meetings. And so in any case, that's all to say that I'm even more impressed by that answer because because I wish I had thought to do something similar of sending out that kind of motivational message on a weekly basis. And do you think you'll keep that up, by the way, as we keep moving
mhm.
forward?
That's been a very interesting question. I am committed to do it for the next year,
Yeah.
and I have had someone tease me and say that I could just regurgitate previous messages, and I'm not going to do that.
Your team is too long term, though. They'll all
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and I think that when you are a CEO of a virtual company, you
Yeah.
don't have that management by walking around that
Yeah.
was
That's
sort of
right.
talked about in all of the business journals way back when. And you can have Zoom calls and you can have check-ins, but sometimes just letting your team members know that it's okay and that I understand. I think my message today is that I've let some of my self-care routines slip, and because of that I've put
Yeah.
on a little bit of weight, which I was very proud of myself for keeping weight gain down while the pandemic was going on, as I watched everyone else sitting in front of their computers and eating.
Yeah.
Um, but being vulnerable,
Yeah.
being honest, and saying, it's okay. We're in this together, because when we do Zoom calls and we do the check-in calls,
Yeah.
it's really about business. Yeah, we have chit chat in the beginning, but there's nothing that's clearly just, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And a lot of people you find succeed in a virtual environment because they're very introverted and they don't
Yeah.
like being put on the spot on how they feel. And
Yeah.
the reason I know that works here is the follow up messages. I don't expect to hear back from anyone that, they read the message. Um, but the number of
Mm,
staff members who have said, that really hit home this week. I really needed
that's
it. Thank
great.
you. And that's when I start tearing up. I'm like, okay, I can't run and give them a hug,
Yeah.
but I can at least let them know that I have my moments when
Yeah.
I'm hurting and when I'm alone, and I'm still there and I can still understand what they're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's powerful. Yeah. So, um, I didn't mean to interrupt. Were you?
No, well, it was interesting when I sent my 50-second message last Friday.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, uh, how did I come up with the idea of doing it, and it was uh, one of my team, and I blame him. One of my team said something's got to be done, and I was like, okay, I've got to figure out what that something is.
Yeah.
And when I worked at American Red Cross, it was, I happened to be there during one of their largest disasters at that time. And the message for communication during a disaster was, be quick,
Yeah.
be decisive, and let people know that you're there for them. And so I may not have enjoyed my years at American Red Cross, but that's a whole nother story. I did appreciate that training of
Yeah.
how you handle a disaster and how you handle
Yeah.
your team during a disaster.
Yeah. Well, so that's a good segue into my one of my last questions, which is there anything you wish you knew earlier or quicker as CEO? Like, are there any lessons that you kind of, um, the things that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
Um, that's a hard one. Um,
It is a tough one.
it is a tough one because, as I said, I wasn't raised that I
Yeah.
could be a CEO. When I got my MBA, it was still, well, you're marketing. Marketing will never be a CEO.
Yeah.
I always looked at myself as being part of a large organization, which I pretty much had been until
Yeah.
2 years before being here. So I never thought I would be, and even in the beginning years of being with the company, I was just sort of like, well, okay, I will be a strong force. I'm
Yeah.
hard to sort of tell to be quiet. Um, and then I think as marketing became more and more important in
Yeah.
our world, as far as purchases for anything,
Yeah.
I was able to create more of that role.
Yeah.
What I think the everyone thinks that being a CEO is glamorous and that it's fame and such. It's very lonely. I mean, I'm really glad that I have a co-CEO because we can actually share
Yeah.
those challenges when it is lonely at the top. Um, People see me speaking, they see me doing things out in the community, but I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
And there are very few women CEOs that will actually talk with each other. So
Mm,
that's always a hard one.
hmm.
Uh, yeah, I don't want to go down that track. So
Well,
yeah, my co-CEO is a man, and I'm very pleased with sort of that dynamic. I've had a real hard time making sure that I can work with other powerful women.
hmm. Yeah, I mean, having the right dynamic is so essential on a leadership team.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, in all kinds of ways. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Um, well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. are there any topics that we didn't cover that you wanna talk about? Anything ClearedJobs is up to that we wanna we want to reference, or anything? Yeah, how can people reach out, or how can people get in touch, and who should know about it?
So if you're a employer who's working in the DoD intel space, you're definitely going to want to have your recruiting teams contact us.
Hmm.
Fortunately, our name is our web address, so just clearjobs.net.
Right.
Uh, we're always big in supporting transitioning military, so we give back to the community in many different ways. So you'll find most of my staff is out in the community, making sure that veterans know the best way to find their jobs after
Wow.
they've transitioned out of the military. Um, this evening, one of the reasons I'm sort of dressed up is I'm part of the Ally of the Year Awards, which is
Hmm.
one of the many award programs that I'm part of. So you'll definitely see
That's great.
Cleared Jobs out, as we always are out. And we just are very thankful that we're still here after 20 years.
It's something to be thankful for, and it's also something to be proud of. I mean, it's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah, I sort of wonder, wow, it's been 20 years.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm amazed that when I think about how long my company has been around as well, and it certainly hasn't made it 20 years yet, but I'm proud of where we've come, and 8 years or so is you know I didn't really think of that. I didn't When I started the company, I wasn't thinking about any particular length of time, but I know when I would hear about a company that was approaching 10 years, I would think, wow, that's pretty amazing. And then I just the other day I was realizing, well, I'm gonna be at the 10-year mark before I know it.
Well, that's great. Well, I really appreciate the time that you took with me today.
Well, thanks so much. This has been wonderful. Look forward to following more success with Cleared Jobs.
Thank you so much. Take care.